Please be seated. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's meeting of Middlesbrough Council. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any? Thank you. Any further? Councillor Dryden, yeah. Can we note those? Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any? Agenda item 3, revenue budget, council tax, medium-term financial plan and capital strategy 2019-2020. Mayor Budd.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, could I start, because I usually end by saying this, but could I start by thanking all the staff who worked so hard to produce this budget and the reports that we've got tonight. And more than that, all of our staff who worked so hard daily in spite of massive cuts that we've received. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the context in which where these figures arrive from. And we've talked before about austerity locally, nationally, regionally, because local government is the part of the public sector that has been hardest hit by austerity. The number of people employed by councils has reduced by nearly 900,000 in the last 10 years, while central government staffing has increased by 15%. So we're surrounded by evidence from all sorts of places, including the government and elements in Parliament as well. The Centre for Cities annual report, which came out recently, showed that urban areas, cities in their definition, have been hit hardest by government cuts, and those in the north have had the largest cuts, more than twice the cuts in the south east. The New Economics Foundation, another very recent report, suggests that the cumulative effect of austerity since 2010 has resulted in slower growth every year, and that every household, this is an amazing figure, is now £300 a month, not a year, £300 a month worse off than before austerity. So far from ending austerity, which was announced a few months ago, Tory MPs voted through further cuts to local government just last month, shifting the burden to poorer areas and assuming everywhere had council tax increases. Lord Porter, who I've quoted on a number of occasions, the Tory chair of the LGA, warned that the money councils have to provide local services is running out fast, and there is huge uncertainty about how they will pay for them in the next decade and beyond. And it's really that element of uncertainty that is more disturbing than anything else to some degree. The Public Accounts Committee, and I will read these out, came to some conclusions on the 6th of February. And again, it was about uncertainty and lack of clarity from government. So the conclusions, I think there are 6 of them. Number 1, central government financial support for local government continues to be characterised by one-off, short-term initiatives which do not provide value for money rather than a meaningful long-term financial plan for the sector. The department has an unacceptable lack of ambition for the sector, with no aspiration for improving local finances beyond merely coping. I think that's an important word. Number 3, it's a worry that the department does not know what its minimum expectations are of the full range of services that local authorities are expected to provide. It's a rather damning comment. We are deeply dismayed that the department views the financial sustainability of local authorities solely in terms of a small set of statutory services rather than the full range of services which local people need. We talked on many occasions about the fact that we are not here just to provide statutory services. We are much more important and valuable than that. It's not acceptable that the department repeatedly states that the local authority sector as a whole is sustainable, but refuses to provide evidence about how it reaches these conclusions. We call on the department to revisit its refusal to publish shared definition of financial sustainability. It requires, I think, the Public Accounts can do that, the Public Accounts Committee can do that. It requires the department should write to the committee by May 2019, setting out how its estimates for local authority funding compares with the LGA's forecast of 3.2 million funding gap, and explain any differences. That'll be an interesting explanation. They finally say, and I think this shows their frustration as much as the sector's, we are deeply frustrated to have to repeat the same concerns about the sustainability of the sector and the ability of local authorities to provide the vital services that taxpayers need. That's a Public Accounts Committee, that's not a Labour Committee. And I think it emphasises the difficulties around planning, which is what we're trying to do today for the next few years. The other item of huge uncertainty, of course, is Brexit. And we've talked again about that before, nationally, regionally and locally. I think wherever you look for the figures, whether it's the government, the CBI, the Chamber, or many other bodies, they all suggest that the North East will be hit the hardest in the country from Brexit. Now, it's not a matter of which Brexit, whichever Brexit it is, that will be the case. The government suggested more than 2 years ago now that the UK Prosperity Fund would be a replacement for European funding, which comes, as you will know, largely to areas of deprivation, including ourselves and Durham. They still haven't published anything. I, together with the 4 other leaders from the local authorities in the area, were promised 2 years ago that it was imminent, and we still haven't got that. That replacement for European funding is vital. I think we all know, because we've talked about it often enough, the pressure on children's and adults' social care, such that 88% of councils overspent on children's social care last year. So it's not just here, this is happening nationally. I've mentioned already the regional disparities and the redistribution from towns and cities to shires and from the north to the southeast. Uncertainty is around public health funding in future. The future business rate system is equally uncertain. The fair funding review, which I believe in the North East is now called the unfair funding review, looks like a way of propping up struggling Tory authorities in Tory areas at the expense of towns and cities in the north. Because in future, deprivation will count for very little in the way that these figures are arrived at. Just today, we've had the Stronger Town Fund initiative, which has £105 million for the North East over 6 or 7 years. It has been called the Brexit bribe, and it will amount to £5.70 per head per year in the North East. A drop in the ocean compared with what we've had taken away from us, as I'm sure you would all acknowledge. So that's the context of the figures that you see in front of you in the report. So what we need to do today, I hope, is to approve the budget savings set out in the report, confirm the level of council tax, approve the council tax band rates and the parish council rates, note the refreshed medium-term financial plan, the investment strategy, the treasury management, and the capital strategy report. So this is an attempt, again, to put everything into one place so that I think we can understand the next few years in total. I'm not going to go through the report in any great detail. It largely consists of the report which we received in December. There's a few differences which I point out. As we go through, this has been to the overview of the scrutiny board. So thank everybody who took part in that. That was helpful. There's also been a consultation period, and the details of that are given in the report. We didn't have very many responses, 34, which doesn't seem a huge number. There's been 1 or 2 changes since. We've received yet another one-off grant fund for adult social care winter pressures, and the social care support grant as well for 2019-20 only. So whilst we're grateful for those, one-off funding is just putting the problems off to some degree. So we received slightly less new homes bonus grant than we expected, and that will sort of come through in future years. So there have been a number of changes. The report restates the budget principles and adds more to them, and the budget assumptions. And the recommended budget savings are very much as previously stated in the appendices. The first one being the savings which will have little effect, noticeable effect on public, and then appendix 2, which has more effect on members of the public, and then the ones for future years which are not fully developed yet and will be over a period of time. So the report then runs into the calculation and determination of the council tax. Again, I've got to stress that it is assumed by government in all the figures that they give us that council tax will be increased, and that we will also pass on the cost of social care. The report mentions the national context, which I think I've sort of stressed enough, and then moves on to the calculations around council tax. So I don't intend to say a great deal more about that, although I'm sure others will comment. So I will recommend those recommendations on the front of the report, and be interested in any comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions, comments? Councillor? Sorry, Councillor Branson, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to raise one very important thing about this whole issue. It does seem to me that what's been happening over the last few years, quite clearly, is that local authorities are being asked to fund themselves. And it seems to me that this is one of the most regressive ways in which we can fund services. Local authorities are very different from each other. They have very different problems, very different challenges, and also very different levels of income amongst the population there. We know full well that Middlesbrough has a problem with serious levels of deprivation. I think we're the 5th in the United Kingdom. We also have low levels of income. I was looking at recent figures for the levels of income. Average income in Middlesbrough, it's lower than Stockton, it's lower than Redcar, and it's much lower than the national average. Indeed, a recent report showed that a quarter of the people in Teesside now are living at a level lower than the real living wage. And yet we're being expected to fund the services for significant issues regarding social care and children's services. It doesn't seem to me very right that we should be asking people living in one of the poorest areas of Britain to shoulder the burden of some of the greatest problems. Surely the whole idea is that the broader shoulders should bear the greatest burdens. Doesn't seem to be happening. In fact, it's fairly clear that most of the reasons for shifting the burden onto local authorities is so the government can make tax cuts. We saw some of those tax cuts last year, and we also saw that the consequences of those tax cuts is that the greatest beneficiaries, 70% of the benefits of those last tax cuts, were for people on higher tax bands. We are taking from people who are struggling to make ends meet, and we're giving it to people who are already well off. This is quite inequitable, and I cannot see how this in any way chimes with the idea of one nation conservatism. And so it does seem to me a real pity that we're in this situation. I only hope that we can change the way we operate in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chris Hobson.
Chair. We would like to start by thanking the council staff who put so much work and effort into preparing this budget. However, we still cannot understand why we are putting the council tax up once again rather than finding other sources of income. We are borrowing vast amounts of money to plough into a vision. Well, how about the vision the residents of this town have? How about a vision of reducing the council tax because residents cannot manage now, never mind with another 4.99% on their bills? How about a vision of attracting people to spend money in the town, not taking more out of their pockets? How about a vision of employing more seasonal workers in area care, not less? How about a vision of not putting council tax up just because the government say we can? How about a vision of not borrowing any more money and paying off the 139 million of debt that we have? How about a vision of not paying out a massive £100,000 a week of interest on this debt? And how about a vision of spending 106 money on a school so that all Middlesbrough pupils have a place, rather than wasting it on schemes like widening the road on Dixon's Bank? The residents who elected you onto this council to work on their behalf deserve to be thought about, and putting their council tax up once again is not the way to do it. This council have had so many visions, I think a trip to Specsavers might help. But where a new school is concerned, you certainly need to go to Vision Express. We will not be voting for this budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Arundale.
Thank you, Chair. It's already been said, but I agree entirely that James Bromley and his team do deserve to be congratulated on the amount of work that they put into this. Not necessarily that I agree with everything, and I do echo the thing that I think I'm quite worried about the amount of borrowing we have. But I'd like to point out one particular issue that concerns me, and that is the amount of uncollected tax that's happening in the town. Last year, that amounted to over 7%. And if the trend follows, which has been going on for a number of years now, next year it would go to 9%. Now, I find that quite unfair to those people that do pay their council tax. You know, because what happens if somebody doesn't pay their council tax, somebody else has to top that up. And it's just, to me, that's just not fair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Biswas.
Thank you, Chair. Yet another year, but let me explain a few things, I think, for the resident of our town. Budget is one of those things, once a year, we have to do it. It's a statutory, mandatory thing, what this council has to agree to. Mayor's budget is not taken very lightly. It takes many, many hours, many, many days, like Mayor has already said. And also, I agree everything Councillor Brunson had said. So let's put one thing clear. I don't think our media actually helped this. From tomorrow, whenever we're going to go to people's door, the first thing they're going to come to us and say to us, why did you put the council tax up? Well, you didn't listen to the opposition. Now, we have a so-called independent-led opposition. I don't need to remind you the mechanism for being an opposition. I'm one councillor or one politician, what I would say, love to have a healthy opposition, because a healthy opposition is always productive and also democratic. But what we have here is just complain, complain, complain day and night, yet not knowing at all what they're complaining about and what structure they're using to complain. in this case, if we do not agree to a budget, let's, for example, tonight's budget. You say to us, why did you put the increase of 4.9%? If we do not agree, what that really means is that we could not agree to a budget to take this town for the next year. So by default, what happens is we are unable to govern our town or cities. And what that triggers is we failed to do that. And if we fail to do that, it's not in the book of running a governance like ours. And what happens then, the government of the day come over and takes it over your council and says, you failed to agree to your budget, so therefore, as from tomorrow, the government has to take it over. In other words, you will be run from London. We, all these 40-odd people, have nothing to do with it. We are bankrupt. And I'm sure our residents don't want to see this town go bankrupt. So if you don't want to see your town being bankrupt, you had ample time to put forward an alternative budget. You've been invited to put forward an alternative budget which balances the book. And also your borrowing, what you are talking about. By the way, those borrowing are almost all of it is paid for by the other people who we borrow it for. Anyway, I'm not going into those details. And if you want to have some, please come and see me, I'll give you the answers. So you haven't put forward, well, I haven't seen one. Have you? Any of you? I haven't seen an alternative budget, which I could see that, hang on a minute, I think I quite like that other budget because not only it doesn't increases the council tax, but also it balances the book and also is fair for our town. Believe me and me, I would be the first one to vote for your budget. But you haven't got the guts to put forward that alternative budget. And yet you come around here, I don't want to go through that budget. I don't want to vote for that because I couldn't. Now, you have to agree to this budget. If you don't, that means you don't want your town to be run efficiently. So tonight, I'm sure the opposition, well, so-called opposition, whatever it is, you're going to put your hand up saying that I don't agree to that budget. So which budget do you agree to? I haven't seen one. So please, 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 don't tell every year, 12 years I've been here. No, more than 12 years, sorry, 16 years. 16 years. Each and every year you oppose to the budget, and yet not a single year you proposed an alternative budget. So please, the media, tell the public, because tomorrow I'm sure you're going to write it down, that even though the opposition opposes not to increase the council tax, the Labour group yet increased it again. Well, it's not our fault because we know how to balance our book and we have to. And we know why we have to. Let's keep that. And that's all I need to say. If you have any shame, vote for it.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Matthew Story.
Vote for it. So do we have to be embarrassed to vote for the budget? Or was that a
I think we'll just let that one go, Councillor. Yeah. Right. Councillor Matthew Story.
Thanks, Chair. It's been a really fascinating debate thus far. I've been really enjoying it. I think Councillor Rathmell wanted a point of clarification, and I think for everybody in the room, it might be useful, perhaps someone can enlighten us. We've heard from Councillor Hobson and from Councillor Arundale tonight. I'm not entirely sure in what capacity they were speaking tonight. I'm presuming it's as Conservatives. I read the newspapers, and I noticed that there have been some changes. So I take it that was the Conservative viewpoint. I certainly wouldn't want them to be running on any manifestos that they've spoken out against perhaps tonight. So perhaps they could clarify that for us. Councillor Arundale mentioned something about uncollected council tax, which is a fair point. there's actually uncollected income tax in this country from the very richest, and unfortunately the government doesn't bother collecting that, and they haven't made much of an effort to come down on their very rich friends and make sure that we have that money. And that wouldn't mean that we could spend more money on public services should we wish to do so, but we don't. So perhaps before their memberships expire, they might be able to contact their Conservative government friends and ask them to do a little bit more to make sure that the Exchequer has a little bit more money to be able to dish out to local authorities like our own. The thing about Councillor Hobson's speech pretty much every budget time is that it's a lovely wish list of things, and it says what we should be doing. We should be doing this, we should be doing that, and we should be doing the other. And I would love to stand up here and give a shopping list of spending commitments that we could make, because that's what I came into politics to do, is to try and make sure that public services were properly funded and make sure that local councils could provide all the services we wanted. But unfortunately, because of their government, because of their current government, we can't do those things. And it isn't okay to just stand up and give a shopping list of all the stuff you'd like to do in a perfect world. You'd have to live in some kind of parallel universe to be able to do all the things that Councillor Hobson wants to do every single year, and it happens every time. We have to be realistic, and I don't enjoy the budget process, and I don't think many people in this place do, because we end up talking about how much to cut and how can we find savings, and that's not a fun process for anybody. But I think it would be useful if people didn't just get up and give us a shopping list of what they'd like to do in a perfect world, if they actually could say how they were going to do those things. I mean, I did have some remarks written down. One thing I wanted to mention is that this is a political situation, this budget situation we find ourselves in, the public sector cuts. The average cut for Labour local authorities is 10% higher than it is for Conservative local authorities. So Conservative local authorities don't face the same scale of cuts as we do. That's a political choice. Dave's mentioned the fair funding review, so I won't dwell on that for too long, but I will say that the Irony Ombudsman should really look at the name of that, because it is not a fair funding review. They are deliberately not taking into account deprivation anymore as a criteria for local government funding. And it's rather like the time when they decided to stop measuring child poverty because the numbers were too embarrassing. Maybe they could stop measuring Chris Grayling's record in government, because that's a bit embarrassing too. But what I'm trying to say is, it isn't okay to just stop measuring things. If you stop measuring child poverty, it isn't there. Well, it is. And if you don't account for deprivation in local government funding, then it doesn't exist, but it does. And these things are not abstract, they're not statistical decisions. The 120,000 children who are today living in temporary accommodation are not an abstraction. The 500 new child protection investigations that councils have to start every single day in this country are not abstractions, they are reality. And that is a fact that we should all have to face in local government. One of the things about the bribe that was offered today that particularly galls me is that this government says that austerity is the only show in town, that the only way to manage the economy, the only way that we can have a functioning economy is if we cut budgets and we cut the public sector. And that's a nice story to tell, but it doesn't really follow if, because of your gross incompetence, you lose your majority and you can find £1.2 billion behind the sofa to pay off the DUP to prop up your government. It doesn't really follow that austerity is the only show in town when you can find £1.6 billion to throw at Northern MPs to back a Brexit deal that's already been rejected by a historic margin in the House of Commons. It doesn't follow that austerity is the only show in town when those things are doable, when you can find tax cuts for your richest friends, for the very richest in society, as David Branson has pointed out tonight. Austerity and cuts are not inevitabilities. We are not predestined to face the indignities of poverty and deprivation, the shredding of the welfare state and local council budgets. This government chooses to ignore deprivation, and it chooses to make that ignorance of deprivation one of the defining characteristics of its funding formula for local government. It chooses to stop counting child poverty because it has chosen to do nothing to tackle it. And the government chooses to lavish its underwhelming largesse on the north when its back is against the wall. And I will not tug my forelock and be grateful for table scraps doled out in a grubby deal to get a Brexit deal through the House of Commons. This chamber is going to be stopping soon. We're not going to have many more of these meetings. We're going to be off on the election campaign. And I think it's really important to remember that a vote in the next elections, in these local elections for the Labour Party in this town, is a vote to protect local government. It's a vote to defend local government from the cuts that this Tory government is pursuing against people like the people of Middlesbrough. And the silence from the opposition in the face of those cuts for the last 10 years has been absolutely appalling. And that's why people must vote Labour. They must vote for the Labour Party on May the 2nd.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else wish to contribute? Oh, sorry, Councillor, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Well, we would like to see different things and things that we can change within this town. I'm glad it's being called a town all of a sudden. Now there's £1.6 billion on the go. MEMA, £500,000 a year. We closed all the community centres. This government didn't say to do that. That was a council choice, and it was a Labour council choice. £1.5 million a year on 2 office blocks over the next 35 years, £50 million. Again, money that could have been used. We can't find £3,000 a week, £3,000 a year for our lollipop lady who's been taken off Fullbeck Road. Same's happened at Green Lane. If you vote for this budget, as Councillor Biswas says, well, you're voting to remove that lollipop lady off Green Lane. We mentioned about the borrowing. We mentioned this 4 years ago to the Mayor, and he said every council has borrowing, and that's quite correct. But at the time that was mentioned, the borrowing stood at £80 million. It's now at a figure of £162 million. The cost of interest of that per week is £100,000 per week interest, £5.2 million, which is a staggering amount that's just going straight into the bankers' pockets. That's not even touching the debt of £162 million. In the past 4 years, many people here today have been elected over the past 4 years. This council has spent £17.9 million in interest. Imagine what that could have been used for. This council tax increase, we've talked about period poverty in this town as well. This is a council tax that's going to be raised by around 6%. Do we really believe that's going to help or hinder people on period poverty and those struggling with food banks? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? Yes, Councillor McTighe. It's already on, Councillor, I believe. Yeah.
I beg your pardon, would you like to repeat that? No, I thought not. You're a coward.
Councillor McTighe, yes.
I will vote for an increase in council tax as and when every Labour councillor in this room decides to claim only the basic allowance and nothing more, which will save the town £230,000 a year. That's not a lot of money, but I've had 3 lollipop ladies taken out of my ward. It'll pay for them. Now, if you really think a lot about the people in this town and you really want to do the best for them, you'll manage with £6,300 a year and not a penny more. Let's see how many of you will do that.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay. Okay, right. That's enough. Excuse me, no shouting across the chamber. Come on, we know better than that. Right, anyone else wish to speak? Okay, I will now invite Councillor Walker to address some of the comments that have been made. Then I will invite the Mayor to... I do apologise, I didn't see you there, Councillor.
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Rathmell.
Yes, we've heard some interesting comments and debate tonight with regards to the budget. An interesting one was Councillor Story asking what type of view he received from the Conservative group, whether it was independent or whether it was Conservative. I'd like to actually turn that back on the councillor and ask him if his colleagues are giving a Lib Dem or an independent view, especially the one sat behind him. But obviously he doesn't like to talk about that. With regards to the budget cuts and the scale that we're facing, yes, I agree with Councillor Branson. We are being asked to find the savings ourselves. But that's perhaps because they've seen the way that this Labour Authority can fund projects, subsidise projects such as Centre Square because nobody wants to come forward. or the snow centre where they're clambering to have private meetings to purchase land for the developer. In any event, the reason the opposition could perhaps be silent on a lot of issues is because of the cloak and dagger operation of this authority. So many briefings are verbal, so many meetings are behind closed doors, so many papers are kept from members, even though they have access under the access to information rules. And in fact, if you look at your own website, it's not compliant with good governance at the moment. It should show all tender documents that have been, everything that's been put out for tender. We're 6 months behind. They should be produced quarterly. So what is it this Labour Council wish to hide? What is it they've been spending taxpayers' money on? One thing I would like to know from Councillor Walker when she does speak is Appendix 1 compliant this year? Because I remember last year when we discovered the school dinner increase, it was because it was non-compliant with statute. One particular point on this Appendix 1 that doesn't require consultation is CS07, which is a review of Middlesbrough's Safeguarding Children's Board. We're looking at joint arrangements. One concern there is that I am aware a chair of the Safeguarding Board of Middlesbrough's expressed concerns in the way progress hasn't been made. So is it wise to be cutting it when we're not making any advances? And it's actually been raised as a concern by the chair of that Safeguarding Board. And as for Councillor Biswas, I'm concerned. Are we actually here to discuss the budget, or has that decision already been made by the Labour group? Because he did point out that tomorrow, when people's council tax bills land on their mat and go through their door, they'll be approaching him and asking. So we've either got a team working overnight to produce these bills, or the Labour group have already made that decision. In any event, it wouldn't require our input, opposition, or discussion. And as for opposition, there's been plenty over the last 4 years. There's been plenty of challenges. In fact, we've got such a transparent Labour group that the Constitution's been repeatedly changed, so much so even members of the public can't ask questions on anything that's contained within any of the council papers, because council questions by members of the public have to be submitted 7 days in advance, when the papers don't actually go out till 5 days in advance. So well done for your openness and transparency. And that's all I've got to say on it, Chair. It's quite amusing.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, there's definitely no one else who wishes to speak, so I'll now invite Councillor Walker to speak first, and then the Mayor will get the opportunity to sum up. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. If I can address first the slightly misleading information given by Councillor Arundale. As usual, and I'd really like to congratulate the Conservative group, as they still exist before they go their separate ways, for their consistency in year on year misrepresenting the actual council tax collection rate that influences the budget. As has been explained to them, it is the overall council tax collection rate that influences the budget, not the in-year. So it's not the amount, for example, that is billed in 2018-19 that is collected in that year, but the overall amount that we collect that year. So the amount on which this budget is based is not that 7 or 9% or 5%, 7 to 9%, Councillor Arundale quoted, of people not paying the council, not being collected. It's actually on the 97.4% collection rate, which is 2.6% of. You may shake your head, Councillor, but that is a fact. It used to be 98%. In actual fact, at one point, we used to collect about 99%. But as has been also pointed out every year for about the last 4 years, and I know because I've said it, is that the reason why our council tax collection went down was not because we started doing something different, but because government decided in 2013 to take money away from local authorities, pass over the responsibility for what was council tax benefit became council tax reduction, and told them to pass it on to their residents, with the result that those who hadn't paid before, i.e. those with the least amount of money, were expected to cough up 20% of the council tax. We've managed to reduce that now to 15%, but it is still a big ask on people who were already hit by things like other benefit cuts, thanks to their government, by having to pay rent for the first time, or more rent, due to the bedroom tax, thanks to their government, and then had to also pay council tax. We are looking to do more. We have helped people a lot through our financial inclusion group for various measures that have gone on through that, and through the benefit take-up campaigns. And we'll be looking now, we've brought the collection of council tax back in-house to look at how we can collect and help collect council tax in different ways and help people who are struggling to pay. But I believe that the reasons for the 6% less that we now assume to collect is not one that sits, the fault does not sit within these four walls in this council chamber, but sits with the Conservative government. I'm sure that the Mayor will adequately, as he has on so many other occasions, explain to those who don't understand it about why this authority borrows. And I will say a lot of the money that we are investing is actually being invested partly to bring more money into this town or city, but also to on an investor-save basis to bring in money. And that is exactly true in the case of the office blocks in Centre Square. And as Councillor Hubbard may or may conveniently not remember, that there was a financial analysis done before we embarked on occupying one of those blocks. And it was quite simple. Is it cheaper to continue spending money on an office block which is no longer fit for purpose and plough money into that, or is it more cost effective to invest in a new one? And the figures that came back were it was more cost effective to invest in a new one, and that's why we're doing it. With regard to Councillor Rathmell's comments about the saving, I will say that Mika have yet to withdraw their totally flawed argument that they put forward, and it was replied via OSB, on their claims about the additional savings last year, which they got completely wrong. And the CSO 7 is I'll read out, review Middlesbrough's current safeguard children's board arrangements with a view to developing a shared service with Redcliffe and Claydon Borough Council. This is something we've done quite a lot, sharing things with other councils. It does make savings, and sometimes it means that we do things in a better way. I will say on this though, and I know I've stood up here probably the last 4 years and said this, why on earth, when we have a period when consultation is open, when members can challenge things, when they can put forward alternative proposals, didn't Councillor Rathmell actually bring that up at that time? We've had members' briefings. We've had 2 members' briefings on the budget where this could have been brought up. Where there's a singular absence of any input, other than Councillor Hobson did put some suggestions forward regarding the green waste cycle. But apart from that, a single absence of any suggestions that come from the opposition. And, you know, a cynic would think they just waited to the last minute because they knew if they put anything forward, it would maybe challenge and people could actually examine it a little bit. I think, Chair, that I've answered the points that I wish to answer, and I'll leave it to the Mayor to answer the rest.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Sorry, Councillor, no, there's no point of order being made. Everybody's had the opportunity to speak. Everybody has spoken and said what they thought.
Councillor Walker said she was actually going to answer my question about if this one's compliant with statute, the appendix that I referenced. I didn't need to know about that you often work with other authorities. So can I have that clarification?
No.
So she doesn't know, Chair, is that right?
No. Councillor Walker.
Question. All I can say is that the budget savings have either been considered to require consultation or have not. It is mentioned in the report that in some cases we have a statutory obligation to consult. It actually depends on the service we're talking about, and it depends on whether there is an impact on the public. Obviously, we can't consult with the public when there isn't an impact on them because there isn't a public to consult with. So that process has been through. There has been no challenge during the consultation process as to whether the Appendix 1 budget savings should have been consulted on when there was that opportunity for all of those savings. All of those Appendix 2 have been out for consultation. As we said, we've had 34 back. I've got no reason to believe that there has been any breach of our statutory or common law duty in relation to the consultation. None has been put to me within the consultation period.
Thank you, Councillor.
That response, it's quicker to say you don't know.
Mayor Budd, I'll now give you the opportunity to sum up, then we'll go to the vote. Mayor Budd.
Thanks, Chair. This feels a little bit like last year, and the year before, and the year before. It's very much the same old story, isn't it? We have the national government context, which continues to get worse. We have a Tory group, which, unlike Tory councils all around the country, thinks you shouldn't put council tax up. It denies the validity of the Tory chair of the Local Government Association and a number of members of the Public Accounts Committee. The government have made choices, as has been said, and the choice they've made is redistribution, not in the way that many of us felt that redistribution was meant to be. It has gone the wrong way around. And however we look at that, from the poor to the rich, from the north to the south, etc., that is what they've done, quite deliberately, through a political choice, not through economic necessity. Once again, we get an obsession with MEMA and an obsession from somebody else with councillors' allowances, an obsession with we don't put council tax up. Well, you don't have to because you haven't got an alternative. We get the obsession with borrowing. How do you invest without borrowing? No answer to that. Are we borrowing any more than most other places? No, we're not. Are we borrowing is the cost of our borrowing considerably less than, for example, the Tory-led Combined Authority? Yes, it is. No apologies for borrowing. Look around the place, and that will tell you why we've been doing it. It's also a matter of finance as well. If houses weren't being built and land having been sold, we would have to find 5.6 million more in cuts. I'm not sure where that would come from. If we weren't investing in building offices to ensure that business rates improved in future, I don't know where our future would be. We will be cutting more and more and more. That, to me, isn't an alternative. We do valuable things, not just statutory services, and that's what this council's for. I make no apology for MEMA whatsoever. It's a very, very short-sighted view to think that can be replaced by anything else. If we have ambition, and some of us do, then this is a city centre for the Tees Valley of 700,000 people. It deserves the quality of services that we're trying to provide it. What else was said? I think between us, I guess that Councillor Walker and I have probably dealt with it. Some of Councillor Rathmell's comments I find somewhat difficult to understand. We are not subsidising the snow centre. Councillor Hubbard mentioned putting money into bankers' pockets. I don't know where these bankers are. Do you not know where we borrow money from? So overall, I think once again we're left with the situation is either you vote for a very rational, well-presented budget, which I think maintains our priorities and keeps our finances stable, or you don't, and no alternative has been put forward. So I would suggest there is only one alternative. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. No right of reply, Councillor. Sit down, Councillor. There's no right of reply. There's not a point of order. Everybody's had the opportunity to speak. Everybody's spoken. Please sit down. Please sit down, Councillor. We're going to the vote. Please sit down. You have not got a right to response whatsoever, Councillor. Please sit down. Please. I can't help it. I choose not to shout. Please sit down, councillor. Right, we're now moving to the vote. As you will be aware, as in previous years, it is a recorded vote. Mrs. Dorshell will shout out your name, and then you will either say for the budget or against. Pretty straightforward. Mrs. Dorshell.
Mayor Budds. Councillor Arundel. Councillor Biswas. Councillor Blondell.
For.
Councillor Blythe. Oh, sorry, we've got apologies. Councillor Branson. Councillor Brunton Dobson. Councillor Carr. Councillor Coop. Councillor Davison. Councillor Dean. Councillor Goodchild. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Halawi. Councillor Chris Hobson. Councillor John Hobson. Councillor Hubbard. Councillor Hussain. Councillor Lewis. Councillor Morstan. Councillor McCabe. Councillor McGee. Councillor McGloin. Councillor McTighe. Councillor Mohan. Councillor Purvis. Councillor Rathmill. Councillor Rooney, Charlie Rooney. Councillor Denise Rooney. Councillor Rostron. Councillor Saunders. Councillor Sharrocks. Councillor Story. Councillor Jeanette Thompson. Councillor Mick Thompson. Councillor Jeanette Walker. Councillor Nikki Walker. Councillor Walters. Councillor Walkington. Councillor Lewis Young.
Okay, thank you. That was 27 votes for the budget, 12 against. The budget is passed. Thank you. Moving on, agenda item 4.
It's merely a report that members note that the date of the next council meeting has changed. It was previously listed for the 27th of March at 7 p.m. and it will now take place on the 15th of March at 4 p.m.
Thank you, Councillor. Everybody okay with that? Thank you. Agenda item 5. Resolution to call extraordinary meeting to award the freedom of the borough. Mayor Butt.
Right, I hope that we can all agree this. For those of you who are not aware of Mackenzie Thorpe, he's an internationally renowned artist from Middlesbrough, born and brought up in Middlesbrough, and in spite of some considerable early difficulties in his life, which he talks about quite freely, he's moved on and become a real ambassador for this place. A lot of his art still includes pictures from his past, from his youth here and from Middlesbrough, particularly around the transporter and, dare I say it, football. He has an impact on this town already. Just across the square on the side of the library is a Mackenzie Thorpe Erimus painting. I think there are Mackenzie Thorpes in the station, at the university, in the hospital and at the football club. He has had an impact on this place and continues to do that. He's about to start his 30th year as an artist, and will start that off here and in Richmond, where he still has a studio. So I hope we can all agree this is a pretty rare event, and I think this guy has had a considerable effect on this place and continues to do that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. It's been moved by the Mayor. I believe we have a seconder.
Yeah, yes, I'd like to second this. I really think that Mackenzie Thorpe's done an awful lot for Middlesbrough. He does go around the world and tell people about Middlesbrough, and I think he deserves this. So, yes, I will second this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Okay, all those in favour, please show it. Straight show of hands. Yes, that is unanimous. So we will be calling an extraordinary meeting. Right, the provisional date is the 11th of April. I believe that will be confirmed up in the next day or two. That being the conclusion of all business, I'd like to bring this meeting to a close. Thank you all for your attendance and wish you all a safe journey home. Good night.